We've spent the last few days talking about scatter plots, how to create them, how to identify certain outliers, and how to determine what kind of association those scatter plots have. And realistically, those are all benchmarks and like small pieces and small steps that get us towards the bigger picture with scatter plots. And lines of best fit are what's going to start to get us there. So some scatter plots allow us to describe them using a line of best fit. And a line of best fit closely follows the linear relationship of the bivariate data set and allows us to generalize the data. So if you remember, bivariate was really just two variables, right? X and Y, that's your bivariate data set. And by generalizing it, realistically what we're doing is we're making a line. That's when they talk about lines of best fit. Sometimes it'll be called regression lines, but I don't think you'll really hear that until high school. So just understand that those kind of terms interflop, I guess. Now, we have these three graphs down here. And one of the most important things to understand about a line of best fit is that it's not going to work for all graphs. It has to realistically be, first of all, graphs that are linear, because those are the only different kinds of graphs we've been working with, right? We haven't really talked about exponential functions or anything like that. We've just been talking about linear functions, and those are going to be the ones that we can best and accurately draw a line of fit for. So this first one, sure, it looks linear. This one looks linear. It's probably a negative trend. And this last one here, it doesn't look linear. It doesn't look like anything. Honestly, we can't tell if there's a positive trend, a negative trend, any type of association. So we're just going to say, right, that this is kind of no correlation. So we can't worry about that one. But again, we can look at these two. So with these two, I would say that they have relatively strong, maybe a little weaker, but relatively strong. This one is a positive association or a positive trend. And this one would be negative. And what a line of best fit allows us to do is pretty much take a guess about what that generalization would be. So you'll end up, as we go through this, with something that looks like this and something that looks like that. And it's not going to be that easy to draw a line through whatever. Realistically, I want it to be that easy today. So we're just going to kind of oversimplify it. That way, when we get into writing equations for these lines, it doesn't seem as overwhelming. So we're looking at our first example, and this example is about business growth. Our bivariate data, right? We have the day, and we have the amount of customers that this company either acquires or that this company sees on a day, as the days progress. But what this business wants you to do is determine a line of best fit so that over time they can kind of see what kind of customers they might get after day 30 or after day 40. They might want to interpolate or extrapolate, which are things we're also going to get to later. But a line of best fit, again, really helps us to generalize and figure out, okay, well, over the span of 0 to 20 days, how many people on average were coming into the store? How many people were coming into the store over time? Is that time increasing, or the amount of people going into the store increasing? So it kind of helps us to do that. So the first thing we're going to do, realistically, is just look, is it a positive trend or is it negative? Or is there no trend at all? So our first step is to identify the trend, the association, the correlation, whatever you'd like. And that doesn't really require that you write anything down, but it does help you when it comes time to writing things, because if you say, oh, it's a negative trend and your line is going up, you know that you've done something wrong, or maybe that it just wasn't a negative trend. So it just helps to kind of put that in the back of your mind. Now, the second step, and this might seem a little silly, is let's just count the points. And it seems a little weird to count the points, but it's actually going to help us as we start to generalize or average out where all of these points are. So we're going to count the points. All right. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We have 20 points. Perfect. What we want to do with those 20 points is kind of get it so that half of them are on one side and half of them are on the other side. So for step 3, we want to create a line. it's relatively in the middle of the points. You won't always be able to do it. It won't always be exactly that half bar above and half bar below, but it's a nice way to at least think about it, because if you can make half of them above and half of them below, then you know that at least you're somewhere around what that line of best fit should look like. So we already know that we have 320 rather, so you can just start. If you have a straight edge, use a straight edge, a ruler, the edge of your phone, the end of your laptop. But as you start getting to these things, it's really going to help if you have some sort of straight line. So I have this ruler, right? And I want to make sure that about half of the points are above the ruler, half of the points are below. You'll notice that, a couple of the ruler goes through a couple of points, and that's okay. If you want, you can ignore those points in terms of your counting above and below, or you can just pick them for a side. Realistically, I'm not asking you to go too into depth with this. Just get half of the points on top-ish, get half of the points on bottom. So if we're looking, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we have these 3 that are kind of in the middle. I'm okay with that. All right, so that's our step 2. Like, we're counting the points. And step 3, we want to create a line that's in the middle of those points. So since we found something that kind of works, that has the points on top and on bottom, then we can make a line that goes like this. Excuse my line for not being straight. My ruler did not work as a straight edge. I couldn't draw along the side of it, so this is my partially straight line. But again, with this line, right, we have about half of the points on top, we have half of the points on bottom. So as far as we're concerned today, this is going to be the line of best fit. This is going to be the generalization of the data that allows this business to understand what their growth is and use that to predict what's going to happen in different situations. All right, so that's that example. And now we're going down to this one, which does not have a label at all. So pretend that it does. Make it whatever you'd like. Now, again, we're going to look at this and we're going to say, okay, well, what kind of trend does this have? What kind of association does this have? And for the most part, it's going up. So we know that it's going to be linear. It's kind of weak. It's not that strong, but we're still able to do something with that. It's not like super bad, but it's okay. Now, one of the situations you might come across is if you see a point that's down here. Now, what do you do if you have an outlier involved? Do you use that within it or do you not? And what I want you guys to do is just to ignore that outlier. All right, because what it's doing is it's skewing all of your data. So if you try to worry about that outlier and make it so that all that points included, you're going to get a line that looks like this and is not truly representative of all of the data that you see up here. So if you ever see an outlier, if it's really far apart and it's really broken off from the rest of the group, choose to ignore it. All right, so again, we have all of these points. We're saying that it's positive. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 points. So we want 6 on top, 6 on bottom. I know that doesn't add up to 13. I'm not pressed. All right, so if we're looking, it kind of already is split in the middle for us in that there's a couple on top, right, and a couple on bottom. So if we look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on top, which means we have 7 on bottom, but that's okay. This might be a way that you could draw a line of best fit. Maybe somebody else is like, I really don't think so. I want it to be a little bit more even. You might say this is the line of best fit because now you definitely have 6 on top, 6 on bottom, and there's one that's right in the middle of that line. Lines of best fit for us are going to be something that's kind of more personalized just for the time being. And I'm okay with that. You got to work with what you have to work with. So as long as you're able to defend yourself, if I were to ask you, I'm okay with the kind of line that you give me. All right, so this is going to be our line of best fit. Rather simple. All right, now we're looking at this. This is probably a little weaker, but that's okay because it's not necessarily no correlation yet. We can still generalize it, but this time is a negative trend. It's a negative association. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points. Perfect, fine. Maybe you want a couple points to go through the middle of that line. Maybe you don't. But you want to have a line that makes sense. So if you just start, right, with your straight edge, I'm sorry that I don't have one, and you start making your line, you can make it so that they're half on top, half on bottom. Now, if you look at the line that I just made, there's 5 on top, which means that there's 10 on bottom. So that's not something we want to work with. So this is going to go. And we're going to try that again, which is why it's going to be really helpful that you have a straight edge or something that you can kind of turn and move until you get to a point where you have about the same on top and the same on bottom. All right, so if we try this again, not like that because that's ugly. If we try this again, and we look, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on bottom. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on top, and we have that 1 in the middle. Now, this is okay. I'm not really going to be mad at this. It is what it is. But if you can get it to be so that there's just a little bit more on top or on bottom, then that's fine. Realistically, with this one, you can't, because you'd have to do something like this, and that's definitely not a straight line. So as long as it's relative and it's close, I'm okay with that. All right, so now we're looking at these from the notes. And if you already looked at the notes, then I think you'll be fine. But take the next few minutes to just try and identify what the best line of best fit is going to be. So for each of them, you have 3 options-ish. Which color is going to be the best? Which line makes the most sense in being the line of best fit? So pause this now, and when you've tried it, come back in and see if you got the answers right. All right, so if we're looking at this first one, right? Now, this wasn't meant to be hard, so I hope I didn't challenge you too much, but we know that it's a negative trend, so there's no way that blue line's going to work. It doesn't go through a lot of those points. Now, this negative trend, it's got a really, if we start going back to slope, and I don't really want you to think about it as slope, but it's rather steep. It's not going down slowly, it's going down relatively quickly. So if we look at this pink line is definitely not going through those points, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on top, and this whole slew of the rest of them on the bottom. So we're able to say, okay, this pink line doesn't work. This red line, however, goes through about half of those points, right? Half are on top, half are on bottom. So for this example, we'd say red. All right. For number 2, we have a positive association. All of these lines are going in a positive direction, so we can't really eliminate anything. So we're just going to have to look at these lines and figure out what's going on from these lines. So we'll start with blue again. If we look at this blue line and just try to start from where this blue line starts. So if we look at this blue line, it starts right here. Now, automatically, it's not really in the middle of that data. If we wanted a line to be in the middle of that data so we could ensure that it's going to the rest, here isn't where it would start because most of the data starts in this region. So we're going to eliminate this blue line. Now we have a pink line and a red line. This pink line isn't going through much of that data either. Again, we have a cluster on the bottom here, and then the most of them are on the other side of that pink line. So we're not going to include this pink line. This red line starts in that general vicinity, and it looks like it's splitting off so that half of the points are on top, half of the points are on bottom. So we're going to say that this one is also the red line. For number 3, we have a negative trend. All of our lines are in a negative direction. So again, we're looking for things that make sense, right? Since our points are here, it makes sense that our line is here. Somewhere in that region is where it starts. These 2 do not start in that region. So that's helpful. It's the red line. I didn't realize when I made this, most of the answers would be red, so my bad. All right, we have number 4, number 5, and number 6. For number 4, if we're looking at that region, we'd know that it's the blue line. For number 5, it's positive, which means pink doesn't work and blue definitely doesn't work, right? There's 2 below and all of these above. That's not happening. So we're going to call this the red line. And then for number 6, this one's where it gets kind of close. They're both kind of in the general vicinity, so you're going to have to really look and try and figure out, well, which one makes more sense in terms of what's above and what's below. For this video's sake, we're just going to say red. That is the answer. We're not just going to say that, like the answer's red. But if you have a question about that, let me know. Today's assignment is going to be a little bit like this. You're either going to have to match up which line works, or you're going to have to draw your own line like we did with these examples over here. So good luck with that. If you have any questions, please let me know. And this is really going to help us move forward and start writing equations to these lines and using them to make predictions about what's going to happen in the future.